Hey guys, tonight, you and I are slipping past the velvet rope, under the mirror ball, and straight down into the glittering, sweaty, slightly criminal underworld of 1970s American disco, a world that sold itself as pure joy and ran, underneath, on cocaine, laundered cash, and a doorman deciding whether you were a real person. Not with elegance, not with restraint, not with anything resembling a sensible bedtime. No. With platform shoes, fruit punch, garbage bags of skimmed money stuffed into the walls, and a giant cartoon moon sniffing a cartoon spoon over the dance floor. Quick word before the bass kicks in. I'm genuinely glad you showed up tonight. If this is the thing that finally walks you down into sleep, leave a like on your way past, hit subscribe, and let me know down below which city you're drifting off in, and the single worst dance move you have ever inflicted on a public floor. Odds are, a handful of you are reading this from a treadmill you have not touched since the disco era ended. I respect the ambition. Settle in however you sleep best. Kill the lights, aim a fan at yourself, and drag the blanket up like you're hiding from an imaginary bouncer with strong opinions about your pajamas. Have you ever wondered what it actually cost to get past that rope? Who was hiding cash inside the drywall like insulation? Why a 77-year-old retired lawyer was the most committed clubber in Manhattan? What a disco biscuit was, and why anyone trusted a pill named after a snack. Did anyone in their sleep? Did they ever feel their own feet again? And what kind of person blows up a stadium full of records and calls it a Thursday? Congratulations! You just woke up in New York City, 1978. Your shirt is open to the navel, your shoes are taller than your judgment, and a man at a rope has just decided your entire night with a single glance. Somewhere below you, the money is already disappearing. Good luck. You start getting ready 4 hours before you actually leave, because tonight the outfit is not decoration, it is your passport. You are standing in a small apartment in 1978, holding a polyester shirt that you will unbutton to the sternum whether the weather agrees or not. The platform shoes are by the door, adding 3 inches and a small element of risk. Everything you put on is calculated for a single audience of one man you have never met, who stands at a rope and decides, in about 2 seconds, whether you exist tonight. The shirt is the centerpiece, and the shirt does not breathe. Polyester in this decade is less a fabric than a personal greenhouse, stifling, airless, and faintly punishing, and you will spend the night being slowly steamed inside your own outfit. It holds heat, it holds smoke, and by 4 a.m. it will hold the entire memory of the evening in its weave like a diary you cannot wash. You put it on anyway. Comfort is not on tonight's ballot. Your neighbour, Marco, who has been to the club and back twice this week, appoints himself your stylist without being asked. He stands in your doorway, looks you over, and shakes his head at your top 3 buttons like a man inspecting a bridge he does not trust. He reaches over and undoes one more, then nods once, the way a surgeon nods when the patient will probably live. Marco has theories about every inch of you. The collar is wrong. The chain is right, but it should sit higher. The shoes, he admits, are a gamble. The chain is the next decision, and it is a real one. Too little gold and you look like you wandered in from a bus. Too much and you look like you are trying, and trying is the one unforgivable sin of the entire scene. The whole performance has to read as effortless, which takes, in your case, the better part of an afternoon. You are assembling a costume whose entire purpose is to look like it was not assembled. Then there are the shoes, standing by the door with the quiet menace of a contract you have not finished reading. They add 3 inches, which the doorman's eyeline rewards and your ankles resent. You practice a few steps across the apartment and the floor feels suddenly further away and less reliable than it did this morning. Marco watches you wobble and offers the only comfort he has, which is that everyone wobbles, and the trick is to wobble like you meant to. You check the mirror, which is doing its best under one weak bulb. The hair has been negotiated into shape with a quantity of product that would alarm a chemist. The shirt is open to a degree that feels both correct and legally questionable. You look, you decide, like someone who belongs in the room you have not been let into yet. The mirror, to its credit, does not argue. It just reflects, neutrally, the way mirrors do when they have seen a great many people leave looking confident and come back looking otherwise. There is a strange math to all of this. You are spending 4 hours and most of your spare cash to prepare for an evening whose first event is a stranger possibly turning you away at the entrance for reasons he will never explain. It is, in its way, The most expensive coin toss in Manhattan, dressed up as a night out. You are not buying fun. You are buying a ticket to audition for fun. Marco finishes his inspection, declares you acceptable, and heads back to his own apartment to begin the same ritual on himself. You take one last look. The shirt, the chain, the precarious shoes, the carefully careless hair. It is all aimed at one man and one rope and 1 2-second glance. You turn off the light, step into the hallway, and begin the long walk toward being judged. The night has not started yet. You are simply dressed for the verdict. You arrive at the club already, knowing that arriving is the easy part. There is a crowd pressed against a velvet rope on West 54th Street, and you join the back of it the way you would join a lottery you have already paid for. People are not waiting in an orderly line so much as arranging themselves into a hopeful mass, angling for the doorman's eye line. You can hear the bass leaking out every time the door opens, a low thud that you feel in your teeth before you hear it in your ears. The first thing you notice is that this is not a line. A line implies fairness, a front, and a back, a reward for showing up early. This is a pulsing wall of people, 200 deep, anxious, restless, and relentless, all facing the same point of judgment, like sunflowers tracking a cruel sun. You inserted yourself at what you thought was the back, and within minutes the concept of back has dissolved entirely. It is about who is looking at you, not when you arrived. The crowd has a temperature, and the temperature is desperation pretending to be indifference. Everyone is performing the same difficult trick, looking like they do not care whether they get in, while having clearly spent 4 hours preparing to get in. A man near you is laughing too loudly at nothing, a calculated bid to seem like he is already having the time of his life. A woman holds her chin at an angle that must be exhausting. The whole sidewalk is a silent audition, and nobody will admit they are auditioning. The cold does not care about your outfit. You dressed for a hot dance floor, not for 40 minutes on concrete in November, and the open shirt that looks so decisive in the mirror now feels like a tactical error you cannot undo. Your platform shoes, raised above the cold pavement, are the one part of you that is comfortable. The rest of you is learning that glamour and weather have never once been on speaking terms. The bass keeps leaking. Every time the door swings to admit one of the chosen, a wedge of warm noise escapes into the street, a thud and a shimmer of light and a glimpse of the paradise on the other side. Then the door closes and takes it all back. Anthony leans over, a regular somehow always near the front, and tells you the leaking bass is the point, that they want you to hear the party you are not at. The club is selling you the outside of itself first. You are paying in patience. You watch the door admit people in a sequence that obeys no rule you can find. A famous face arrives and parts the crowd like weather. A group of stunning strangers gets waved through instantly. Then a normal pair, dressed like you, holds their breath and gets the small, flat shake of the head, and the crowd registers it the way a herd registers a predator. A brief stillness, a recalibration, a quiet relief that it was not them. There is a strange honesty to the cruelty. Nobody outside this rope is pretending the system is fair. The waiting itself is the product, and the product is working on you in real time, because the longer you stand here, the more you want it, and the more you want it, the more you will forgive once you are inside. 40 minutes ago, you would have been insulted by all of this. Now you are simply hoping to be chosen, and you have stopped noticing the difference. The rope inches closer, or you inch closer to it. The faces near the front are sharper now, the stakes higher, the performance is more frantic. You fix your collar one last time, the way Marco taught you, and you arrange your expression into the one acceptable emotion out here, not eagerness, not anger. 3. Just a calm, bored confidence that you are exactly the kind of person who belongs on the other side of a door you have never once been through. You reach the front of the crowd, which is where the actual test begins. The doorman scans the mass of faces, points at people seemingly at random, and lets them slip under the rope while the rest of you hold your breath and your best angle. There is no menu of rules, no posted dress code, no appeals desk. He looks at you, he looks through you, and somewhere in that 2-second exchange a decision gets made about whether your face fits the room he is building tonight. You have rehearsed looking like you do not care. The man working the rope tonight is the owner himself. A compact, cheerful figure named Steve who treats the sidewalk like a casting call he is personally directing. He does not consult a list. He does not weigh your merits. Steve stands at the rope, scans and points, and his pointing has the casual authority of a man choosing which puppies go to good homes. When he turns someone away, he sometimes sings it. A little sing-song of yes, no, you can stay, you can go. Maybe so, as if rejection were a nursery rhyme he never gets tired of. He has a theory about all this, and he is happy to share it with anyone holding a notebook. He says putting together a crowd is like mixing a salad. Too much of one kind of person and the whole thing goes flat. He wants a little of everything, tossed together, glamorous and strange and beautiful in unequal measure. You are, in this metaphor, a single ingredient being held up to the light, and the chef is deciding whether you improve the bowl or just take up space in it. You watch the people ahead of you get sorted. A woman in an astonishing dress is in before she finishes smiling. A nervous suburban couple dressed perfectly well gets the flat little shake, and you can see the exact moment their evening dies. The cruelty is not loud. That is what makes it land. There is no shouting, no explanation, just a small motion of a hand that reorganizes your whole night, delivered by a man who is already looking past you at the next ingredient. Your turn arrives the way a wave arrives, all at once and faster than you expected. Steve's eyes land on you. You hold the expression Marco drilled into you, the calm, bored confidence, the face of someone who has somewhere better to be and is doing this club a favor by considering it. Inside, your heart is doing the work of a small, frightened animal. You give nothing away. The whole performance comes down to 2 seconds and a refusal to blink. He looks at the shirt. He looks at the shoes, the gamble Marco warned you about. He looks, for one terrible instant, directly into the part of you that spent 4 hours and most of your money on this exact moment. And then the hand moves, and the rope lifts, and you are through, propelled forward by a relief so total it nearly buckles your already unreliable ankles. The thing nobody tells you is that getting picked feels like being told something true about yourself, even though you know, intellectually, that it means nothing. A stranger glanced at your outfit and made a snap decision based on a recipe for a salad, and your entire nervous system has chosen to interpret this as a verdict on your soul. You float past the rope feeling chosen, feeling real, feeling like somebody. The feeling is manufactured and you cannot make yourself stop having it. Behind you, the wall of hopefuls closes back up, and the next face lifts itself toward the light, performing the same calm boredom you were performing 30 seconds ago. You do not look back at them. Looking back would break the spell, and you have just paid far too much for the spell to break it now. You step toward the warm leaking thunder of the door, a person who exists tonight, and you let the rope and everyone still trapped behind it disappear from your mind entirely. You make it through the rope, and immediately the night starts charging you money in cash. There is a cover charge handed over in bills, a coat check that costs more than the coat is worth, and a bar ahead that will take the rest. Nobody writes anything down. No receipt appears, because no receipt is coming. You are now inside a building that runs almost entirely on untraceable paper money, and you have just fed it your first contribution of the evening without thinking of it as anything but the price of getting warm. The cover comes first, collected by a man at a small podium whose only job is to take folded bills and tilt his head toward the lights. He does not make change with any urgency. He does not offer a stub, a ticket, or any proof that the transaction occurred. The money goes into a box, the box goes somewhere, and you go forward. You have just made a payment that exists nowhere except in your memory, and in a box you will never see again. Then there is the coat check, run tonight by a brisk, cold, and unsmiling young woman named Donna. Donna takes your coat, hands you a numbered tag, and quotes a price that briefly makes you reconsider hypothermia. The coat is worth maybe $20. The privilege of not holding it for 6 hours costs a sum that suggests the coat will be guarded by trained professionals. Donna does not negotiate. Donna has a line forming behind you and the bored efficiency of someone who takes more cash in a night than she will admit to anyone. You notice, because you are the kind of person who notices, that none of this leaves a trace. At a normal store there are receipts, registers, a paper trail that ties money to a moment. Here the money simply enters the building and dissolves. The cover, the coat, the coming drinks, all of it arrives as anonymous paper and gets folded into a flow you cannot follow. It is, you think, a very strange way to run a business, unless losing track of your income is the actual business. The bar is the third toll, and the most relentless. A drink here costs what a small meal costs anywhere else, and you pay it in cash, and again nothing is written down. The bartender takes your bill, makes your drink, and the math happens entirely in his head and then evaporates. Multiply that by every drink, every guest, every night. And you are standing inside a river of currency with no banks, no meter, and no memory. Donna, when the line thins, tells you something offhand that stays with you. She says the coat check alone, in cash, on a good night, is worth more than her old office job paid in a month. She says it the way you would mention the weather. She is not bragging and she is not complaining. She is simply describing the ordinary daily fact of working inside a machine that prints money and keeps no diary. What you are seeing, without quite having the words for it, is the real engine under the glamour. The mirror ball and the famous faces are the part they want photographed. The part that matters is this: a steady, untraceable flood of cash, collected at every door and counter, that can be counted by no one and claimed at any number the owners choose. The dancing is real. The cash is realer. And the cash does not believe in receipts. You tuck your numbered coat tag into your pocket, finish handing the night its entry fees, and turn toward the noise and the light. You came here to dance. The building has other priorities, and it has already collected its share of you in small, forgettable, perfectly anonymous installments. You think nothing more of it. That, you will eventually understand, is exactly how the building prefers it. You discover quickly that the bathroom is not really for what bathrooms are usually for. It is the negotiating room of the entire club, a tiled space where introductions get made, small folded papers change hands, and conversations happen at a volume the dance floor will not allow. You go in to fix your hair and come out having met 4 people and missed an entire song. There is a social order in here as strict as the one at the door, and learning it is its own small education in who matters tonight. The first thing that hits you is that it is quiet in here, or what passes for quiet. The thunder of the floor drops to a muffled, distant, and almost gentle heartbeat through the walls, and for the first time all night you can hear an actual sentence. This, you realize, is half the appeal. People do not come in here to escape the party so much as to conduct the parts of the party that require words. There are, by rough count, approximately 7 distinct conversations happening at this sink at any moment. The dance floor is for bodies. The bathroom is for deals. The mirror above the sinks is the busiest surface in the building, and almost nobody using it is looking at their own face. People lean toward it for reasons that have nothing to do with grooming, and the small folded papers move from hand to hand with a casualness that would be alarming anywhere with better lighting. You came in to fix your hair, which makes you, briefly, the only person at the mirror doing the thing the mirror is for. A man beside you notices and seems to find it quaint. Reggie leans on the sink like a maitre d' of a restaurant that serves no food, greeting every arrival. He knows everyone. He makes introductions you did not ask for, performs them with a flourish, and somehow leaves each person feeling slightly more important than they were 30 seconds ago. Reggie's currency is not cash. It is access, gossip, and the small, thrilling sense that he could connect you to anyone in the building if he decided you were worth it. The social order in here is its own delicate machine. There is a way to wait your turn, a way to acknowledge the right people, a way to be present without being a problem. Break the etiquette and you do not get scolded, you simply get frozen out, talked around, made to feel like a draft that someone left a door open for. You watch a loud newcomer commit exactly this error, and you watch the room close around him like water around a dropped stone. What strikes you most is how much of the night actually happens in this small, bright room rather than out on the famous floor. The introductions that will matter tomorrow get made here. The chemistry that fuels the dancing gets arranged here. The reputations get traded here in fast, muffled sentences while a sink drips and someone reapplies something at the mirror. The dance floor gets the photographs. The bathroom gets the business. Reggie eventually decides you are acceptable, mostly because you waited your turn and did not act like the dropped stone. He tells you the one rule that covers all the others. Whatever you see in here, he says, you saw nothing. It is the same rule as the balcony, the same rule as the back office, the same rule that holds the entire building together. The club runs on cash and discretion is just cash you pay in silence. You finish with your hair, which is the only honest thing that happened at this mirror all night, and you turn back toward the muffled heartbeat in the walls. The bathroom door opens, the volume slams back to full, and the quiet negotiating room vanishes behind you as if it never existed. You step back into the bodies and the light a little better connected than you came in, carrying 4 new names and 1 firm instruction to remember none of it. You learn, without anyone formally teaching you, that the night has a chemistry to it and that you are expected to participate. Cocaine is everywhere, and goes by blow. The heavy, rubbery pills that turn your legs to warm rope are quaaludes, and on this dance floor they are called disco biscuits, as if they were a snack. Each thing does a different job at a different hour, and the regulars manage their intake like a complicated bus schedule. You are making decisions all night that have nothing to do with the music. The cocaine is the engine of the whole operation, the reason a room full of people can dance from midnight until the sun comes up and treats sleep as a personal failing. It is so woven into the scene that the club has put a giant illuminated moon on the wall with a mechanical spoon that lights up and rises to his nose on a timer, which is roughly as subtle as a billboard. Nobody finds this shocking. They find it decor. The moon sniffs his spoon over the dance floor like a mascot, and the crowd dances on beneath him without looking up. Then there are the disco biscuits, which is a genuinely insane thing to call a powerful sedative. A quaalude turns your legs to warm rope and your judgment to suggestion, which on a crowded dance floor produces a very specific kind of swaying, beaming, slightly boneless dancer. You can spot them instantly. They move like a person made of warm taffy, delighted by everything, in no hurry to remain upright. Calling it a biscuit is the scene's way of pretending a sledgehammer is a throw pillow. The regulars treat all of this as a logistics problem, and they are weirdly good at it. There is a woman named Carla who manages her night like an air traffic controller. A little of this at midnight to go up, a little of that at 3 a.m. to keep going. Nothing too early, nothing too late. Carla glances at her wrist when she means it is time, a small, private gesture, and adjusts her chemistry with the calm competence of a nurse on rounds. She is, in her way, the most organized person in the building. You, on the other hand, have no schedule, which makes you an amateur in a room of professionals. Everything is offered casually, the way someone might offer gum, and saying no is allowed, but marks you as a tourist. The pressure is not aggressive. It is social, ambient, the gentle gravity of a room where everyone is doing a thing and you are the one standing still. You make 100 small decisions an hour, and not one of them is about which song is playing. The darker arithmetic underneath the glittering moon is simple and goes politely unmentioned. The euphoria on this floor is not entirely the music, and not entirely the company. A good deal of it has been purchased and ingested, and the bill for that purchase does not come due tonight. It comes due tomorrow and next month, and for some of these beaming, taffy-limbed dancers, much later and much larger than they expect. The moon keeps sniffing. Nobody does that math on the floor. Carla, who has taken a liking to you, offers exactly one piece of advice. And she offers it flatly. Whatever you do, she says, do less of it than the person who is offering. Then she taps her wrist, smiles, and disappears back into the lights to keep her own careful schedule. It is, you realize, the only genuinely caring thing anyone has said to you all night, delivered as casually as the weather. You stand for a moment under the illuminated moon and his timed spoon, in a room that has engineered its own joy out of powder and pills and is dancing on top of the receipt. The music is real. The chemistry holding everyone upright is realer. You make another small decision, and then another, and the night carries you forward on legs that are, increasingly, not entirely taking instructions from you. You are deep into a song when the small brown bottle gets passed to you, and you understand that refusing is allowed but unusual. It is amyl nitrite, called poppers, and the ritual is quick, a sharp, sweet chemical inhale, a few seconds of your heart slamming and the room going bright and loud, then it fades, and you keep dancing. The smell of it cuts through the smoke and the sweat for a moment, and then dissolves into the general fog. People do this casually, mid-step, the way you might check your watch. The bottle itself is unremarkable, a little brown vial that looks like it should contain something medicinal and boring. It is, strictly speaking, not legally a drug at all. There is no ceremony to it. Someone holds it up, you take it, or you wave it on, and either way the song does not pause to wait for your decision. The whole transaction takes less time than a sneeze. When you do take it, the effect is immediate and brief and strange. Your heart slams against your ribs like it is trying to get a better view. The lights go suddenly brighter, the music suddenly louder and somehow closer, and the world tilts into a warm, roaring rush that crests in about 10 seconds and then drains away just as fast. And then it is over, and you are simply standing in the same spot, dancing the same dance, slightly dizzier than you were before. The whole thing is a chemical exclamation point. The smell is the part nobody warns you about. It is sharp, sweet, and faintly horrible. a chemical tang that cuts straight through the established fog of cigarette smoke and human sweat and spilled drinks. For 1 second, it is the only thing you can smell, vivid and clinical, and then it folds back into the general atmosphere of the room and is gone. The floor here has a complete climate of its own, layered and humid and alive, and the poppers add their brief, bright note to it like a struck match. What unsettles you is the casualness. People are not sneaking off to do this. They are doing it mid-sentence, mid-step, eyes still on the floor, the way you might glance at the time or scratch your nose. Vance leans in and offers you the bottle a second time, talks you through a turn, takes a hit himself, finishes the turn, and never once stops moving. To him, it is punctuation. To you, still feeling your heart relocate, it is a small event. There is a logic to why it caught on here specifically. The rush, brief as it is, seems to slot perfectly into the music, arriving just as a song peaks, intensifying the lights and the bass for exactly the few seconds a great track is asking you to lose yourself. The room and the drug were, in a sense, built for each other. The bottle is small, the effect is short, and the dance floor is long, so the bottle simply keeps circulating, topping people up on demand. Vance, between songs, gives you the closest thing to wisdom available on this subject, which is not much. He says the trick is to remember that the rush is lying to you, that the room is not actually brighter, and the music is not actually better. It just feels that way for 10 seconds, and 10 seconds is not a thing worth chasing all night. Then the next song starts, and he is moving again, and the bottle is already 3 people away, brown and unremarkable, and on its endless circuit, you keep dancing. The smell fades. Your heart settles back into its ordinary job. Around you, the little brown bottle continues its rounds, punctuating the night for hundreds of people who treat a chemical heart slam as the most natural thing in the world to do at 2 a.m. on a crowded floor. You file it away as one more thing this room does without blinking, and you let the music carry you back into the warm, roaring middle of it. You assume the dancing here is a free-for-all until someone grabs your hand and corrects you. The hustle is a real partnered dance with actual steps, counts, and turns, and the people who know it move through the floor like they rehearsed, because many of them did. There is a New York version and a Latin version and a half-dozen local arguments about which is correct. You are trying to follow a stranger's lead under flashing lights while pretending this is effortless, which is the one part everyone agrees is mandatory. Your instructor, uninvited but effective, is a woman named Lucia, who took one look at your flailing and decided it was a personal insult she could fix. She grabs your hand, plants your feet, and counts at you over the music with the patience of a drill sergeant who genuinely wants you to live. 1, 2, 3, she says, and turn, and you turn the wrong way, and she resets you without comment and counts again. Lucia did not come here to dance with you. She came here to dance, and you are a repair job that happened to be standing nearby. The steps themselves are deceptively structured. There is a count, a frame, a give and take between the lead and the follow that has to be felt rather than thought. The good dancers make it look like spontaneous, easy, weightless joy, but underneath the joy is architecture, the same 6 counts repeating and varying, executed so smoothly that the effort vanishes. It is choreography pretending to be impulse, which is, you are starting to notice, the governing principle of this entire building. The arguments about which hustle is correct are surprisingly fierce for a thing that is supposed to be fun. The New York version has its loyalists, the Latin version has its own, and they will tell you, unprompted, that theirs is the real one and the others are tourists. Lucia has opinions on all of it and shares them between counts, a running commentary on who dances correctly and who is committing crimes against rhythm. You nod as if you can tell the difference, which you cannot, and she knows you cannot, and counts again. The lights are not helping your education. The strobe chops your partner's movements into a series of still photographs, so Lucia's lead arrives in flickering installments, and you are always a frame behind. You learn to stop relying on your eyes and start relying on her hand, the small pressures that say go here, turn now, come back. It is like learning to read in the dark by touch. Slowly, badly, you begin to feel the count instead of chasing it. And then, for about 8 glorious seconds, it works. You hit the count, you turn the right way, Lucia spins out and back and you actually catch her, and the architecture holds. For those 8 seconds you are not a repair job, you are a dancer, moving through the flickering light like you rehearsed it, which you absolutely did not. Lucia gives you a single nod, the same currency Steve dealt at the door, and it lands just as hard. Then you lose the count again and step on her foot, and the 8 seconds are over, and you are back to being a well-meaning hazard. Lucia does not scold you, she simply resets your feet, sighs the sigh of a teacher who has seen worse, and counts again. 1, 2, 3, and turn. The dance does not care about your feelings. The dance only cares whether you are on the count, and mostly, you are not. You keep at it because the 8 seconds were worth it, and because Lucia has clearly decided not to give up on you, which feels like its own small honor. The floor moves around you, hundreds of bodies executing the same hidden architecture, joy stacked neatly on top of counting. You are at the very bottom of that floor's skill, stepping on feet and missing turns, and you have never in your life worked so hard to look like you were not working at all. You committed to the platform shoes at home, and now, 3 hours into the night, the shoes are presenting their invoice. They added the inches you wanted and the height, the lights flatter, and in exchange they have rearranged your relationship with the floor. Your ankles are negotiating with gravity on every turn. The dance you are doing is partly the hustle, and partly an ongoing effort not to roll off the side of your own footwear. You will discover the full cost tomorrow, but the down payment is being collected now, in real time. The shoes looked magnificent in the apartment, where the only demand on them was standing still and being admired. Out here, under load, they reveal their true nature. The platform raises you off the ground onto a small, unstable plateau, and every turn the hustle demands becomes a tiny act of faith that the plateau will stay under you. Most of the time it does. The rest of the time you perform a quick, discreet stumble and recover it as if it were a move, which fools nobody but is socially required. The ball of your foot has opinions now, and they are getting louder. The shoes were built for an aesthetic, not for 6 hours of repeated weight on a raised platform, and somewhere around the 3rd hour, your feet began filing complaints that your brain initially ignored and can no longer pretend not to hear. There is a specific deep, dull, and insistent ache that arrives and settles in and becomes the quiet drumbeat under everything else, a pain you are dancing on top of and choosing, for now, to outvote. Lucia, who taught you the count earlier, glances down at your footwear and delivers a verdict. She says the trick with platforms is to never fully trust them, to dance from the ankle and keep your weight light, like you are ready to abandon the shoe at any moment. She demonstrates, gliding through a turn that looks weightless, and you try to copy it and produce something closer to a flamingo losing an argument. The skill, like everything else here, is real and takes years, and you have had about 10 minutes. There is a small grim comedy in the math. You chose discomfort on purpose, in advance, with full knowledge, because the height bought you a better angle for the doorman and a better silhouette under the lights. You traded your feet for 2 seconds of approval at a rope, and now you are paying off that trade in installments across an entire night. The doorman is not thinking about you anymore. Your feet are thinking about nothing else. You watch a man across the floor go down, not dramatically, just a sudden buckle as a platform rolls under him, and he is caught by 2 friends before he hits the ground and set back upright like a knocked vase. Everyone laughs, including him, and the dancing continues. It is treated as a known hazard, the occupational risk of vanity, no more remarkable than a spilled drink. The floor has absorbed 1,000 of these small collapses and barely noticed. The strange thing is that you would do it again, and you know it. The ache is real, and the instability is real, and tomorrow will be a reckoning. But right now, raised up on your small, unstable plateau, you are exactly as tall as you wanted to be, catching the light the way you planned. Vanity is a contract with brutal terms, and you signed every page. The shoes hold you up and hurt you in equal measure, and you keep dancing on them anyway. By the 4th hour, you have made a kind of peace with your feet, the peace of 2 parties who are stuck with each other until closing. You dance lighter, from the ankle, the way Lucia showed you. You stumble less. The hot ache settles into the background hum of the night, one more thing being deferred until a tomorrow you are in no hurry to reach. The lights flatter you, the shoes betray you. You stay up on the plateau, and you dance. You drift toward the DJ booth because that is clearly where the night is actually being steered from. The DJ is not just playing records, he is mixing one into the next so the beat never drops and the floor never gets a reason to stop moving. There are unspoken rules about this booth. You do not lean on it, you do not shout requests, and you absolutely do not touch anything. The man up there is inventing techniques that will outlive him. and he's being paid roughly like the person who checks your coat. The DJ tonight is a focused, unsmiling, and precise man named Hector, who works the two turntables like a surgeon who finds chit-chat distracting. Hector holds a headphone to one ear, the next record already spinning silently inside it, and he is listening to two songs at once, the one the room can hear and the one only he can hear, lining them up beat against beat until they are breathing together. Then, at a moment only he can sense, he lets the second one through, and the floor never feels the seam. You had assumed, before tonight, that a DJ was a person who pressed play. Watching Hector, you understand this was an insult you did not know you were making. What he is doing is closer to live engineering. He is reading the floor, deciding what it needs, finding the record that will give it that, and stitching it onto the current song so cleanly that the dancing never breaks stride. The beat does not stop from the moment you arrived until the moment you leave. That continuity is not luck. It is him, working without pause for 6 hours. The unspoken rules around the booth are absolute and enforced by glares rather than signs. You do not lean on it, because leaning jostles the needle, and the needle skipping is a small catastrophe. You do not shout requests, because Hector is building something, and your opinion about hearing a particular song is roughly as welcome as a passenger giving the pilot notes. And you do not, under any circumstances, touch a record. You learn this by watching a drunk man reach toward the crate and get removed from the area with a speed that suggested it was not the first time. He takes no requests, but he reads the floor better than the floor reads itself. You watch him sense a dip in energy before it fully arrives and answer it with exactly the right record, lifting 400 people back up without any of them knowing they were about to fade. It is a kind of mind reading performed on a crowd, and the crowd has no idea it is happening. They think they are simply having a good night. The good night has an author, and he is up in the booth not smiling. Hector catches you watching, which you were not supposed to do either, and instead of glaring, he gives you the smallest possible nod, one professional acknowledging that another person noticed the work. It is the only warmth he offers all night, and it is enough. You understand, in that nod, that he knows exactly what he is doing and exactly what it is worth, and that the gap between those two numbers is a thing he has made his peace with, or decided not to discuss. You step back from the booth, careful not to lean, careful not to touch, and rejoin the floor he is steering. The beat carries on, seamless, unbroken, authored. You dance inside the thing he is building, one of 400 people enjoying a night that one underpaid, unsmiling man is quietly inventing above your heads, and will get almost no credit, and even less money for having invented at all. You make the mistake, or the discovery, of standing directly in front of the main speakers, and your whole body files a report. The bass is not a sound here so much as a weather condition. It arrives through the floor and up your legs and settles in your chest, rearranging your heartbeat to match the kick drum. The system was custom built by people who treated sound the way a chef treats a kitchen. You came to hear music, and instead you are being physically operated by it, and you decide to stay exactly where you are. The first thing you notice is that the bass does not enter through your ears at all. It comes up through the soles of your feet, through the platform shoes and into your shins, then climbs your legs and takes up residence somewhere behind your ribs. Your chest is moving whether you ask it to or not, pushed gently from the inside by every kick of the drum. The bass could rent itself out as a chiropractor. It is less like hearing music and more like the music has reached in and is conducting your organs. The people who built this system clearly did not think of it as a stereo. They thought of it as an instrument roughly the size of a room. There are enormous bass cabinets aimed at the floor and rows of small, bright and needling tweeters aimed at your head, and the whole thing has been tuned, adjusted, fussed over by a specialist who treats a dance floor the way a chef treats a kitchen, where every surface and temperature is deliberate. The hi-hats hiss like static, crisp and sharp at the top, while the bottom end rearranges your skeleton. Nothing about this sound is accidental. The man responsible, you learn, is an engineer named Richard who is somewhere in the building right now with his ear cocked, listening for a frequency that is half a hair off. The staff speak about him the way some people speak about a temperamental genius. Because he is one, he tunes the room. He decides exactly how much chest punch and how much shimmer, and he adjusts it through the night as the crowd fills in and the bodies change the acoustics. The sound you are being operated by is being quietly maintained by a perfectionist you will never meet. There is a temperature to it too, because the speakers and the crowd and the lights have turned this corner of the room into something tropical. You are sweating freely now, the air thick and warm and full, and the bass is a physical pressure in that warmth, a heartbeat the whole room shares. 400 people are standing inside the same enormous sound, their separate chests all being pushed by the same kick drum, briefly synchronized into one large breathing thing. A woman beside you, eyes closed, hand flat on her own sternum, feels the punch land there and laughs without opening her eyes. She does not say anything to you. She does not need to. You both know exactly what is happening. Both of you operated by the same low frequency, both of you having stopped pretending to be cool about it. For a moment, the entire engineered apparatus of the night, the rope and the cash and the chemistry, falls away, and there is just this sound you can stand inside. You stay in front of the speakers far longer than you meant to, letting the bass keep its grip on your chest, letting the tweeters hiss across the top of the room. Somewhere, a perfectionist named Richard leans over the board, easing a frequency back into place. The kick drum keeps conducting your heart. You came in tonight to be seen at a famous door, and you are ending up here instead, in the one part of the building that does not care what you wore, only whether you will stand still and let it move you. You realize around 2 a.m. that this is not an event with an ending so much as a test of endurance. The regulars do not flag because the regulars have a strategy, a private arithmetic of when to dance hard, when to drift to the side, when to vanish into the bathroom and reset. You, on the other hand, peaked at midnight and are now learning that the night has at least 4 more hours of opinions about your stamina. Sunrise is the real closing time, and sunrise is a long way off. The mistake you made was treating midnight like the main event. You arrived lit up, danced hard, gave it everything in the first 2 hours, and now, at 2 a.m., you are discovering that everyone around you was pacing for a marathon while you sprinted the first mile. The regulars are barely warm. They have a whole night planned out in their heads, a sequence of peaks and rests, and you blew your entire budget before the room even filled. Carla, the woman who manages her chemistry like an air traffic controller, also manages her stamina the same way, and she watches you wilt with the mild concern of a coach whose rookie went out too fast. Carla nods and tells you the night has waves, that you ride the big songs and coast the rest, that you find a wall to lean on and a person to talk to and let your legs recover while still appearing to be present. The appearance of presence, she notes, is most of the job after 2 a.m. You try her method, drifting to the edge of the floor, leaning against a pillar, conducting a conversation you can barely hear with a man whose name you immediately lose. Your legs throb gratefully. Your feet, already in negotiations since hour 3, file an updated complaint. You are technically still here, still part of the night, while quietly letting your body bank a little of itself back. It feels like cheating, and it is in fact the entire skill. The room itself does not help you keep time. There are no windows, no clocks, nothing that admits the existence of an outside world with a sun and a tomorrow. The lights and the music and the bass create a kind of permanent now, a sealed, timeless and windowless bubble where it is always the middle of the night and always will be. You genuinely lose track of the hour. You ask someone the time and the answer surprises you, too late and too early, the night both crawling and vanishing. This, you understand, is by design. The same design as everything else here. A room with no clocks is a room you do not leave on schedule. A night with no fixed end is a night that keeps collecting your cover, your drinks, your presents, for as long as your body holds out. The bubble is not an accident of architecture. It is a business model with a dance floor on top, and you are inside it, slowly spending yourself, having lost the ability to tell how much you have left. Around 4 a.m. something strange happens, which Carla promised would happen. You come back. The second wind arrives from nowhere, a quiet reopening of the reserves, and suddenly you are dancing again, lighter than before, emptied of the frantic early energy, and running on something steadier. The regulars nod at you. You have crossed over from sprinter to survivor. You have learned the actual shape of the night, which is not a party but an ordeal you choose to keep choosing. You look around at the people still standing, the committed, the practiced, the ones who knew all along that this was a test and paced accordingly. The room has thinned. The casual visitors are gone, poured back out into the dark to sleep like ordinary people. What remains is the core, the ones who treat sunrise as closing time and sleep as a habit for the week, and you are, improbably, Still among them, upright on your aching plateau, waiting for a sun this room refuses to acknowledge. You approach the bar and learn the second economy of the night, the one that runs on tips and recognition. The bartender is moving fast, the drinks cost more than they should, and there are 40 people behind you who also want to be served first. A folded bill placed correctly buys you a kind of citizenship, faster pause, a heavier hand, a nod next time. You are not just buying a drink, you are buying your standing at this particular 3 feet of counter, and the price floats with the crowd. The bartender is a fast, unbothered and unhurried man named Sal, who serves the entire crowd by a private ranking system he updates in real time. He is not unfair. He is simply running a triage operation, and triage has favourites. There are exactly 3 recognised ways to jump the line. The people who tip well, tip early, and tip without being asked get pulled out of the scrum and served like regulars. Everyone else takes their chances in the wall of waving hands, and the wall of waving hands can wave for a very long time. You make the rookie error first, of course, by simply standing there politely with your money out, assuming that being next in some imaginary line means anything. It means nothing. Sal's eyes pass over you the way Steve's eyes passed over the crowd at the rope, and you realise with a sinking familiarity that you are being sorted again. There is no line here either. There is only Sal's attention, and Sal's attention is for sale. The correct move, demonstrated by a man beside you, is to fold a generous bill visibly, catch Sal's eye, and make clear that being served quickly is a service you intend to pay for separately from the drink. Sal clocks it instantly. The man gets his drink in 30 seconds with a pour that ignores the usual measure entirely. He has bought not just alcohol, but priority. And priority, you are learning, is the only thing actually worth buying in this building. The drink itself, when you finally get it by copying the man's technique, costs what a full meal would cost in any normal establishment and arrives in a plastic cup with the structural ambition of a sandcastle. You pay in cash. Sal makes change in his head. And once again, no paper records that any of this occurred. The bar is the same untraceable river as the door, just flowing faster, a drink at a time, a folded bill at a time, into the same forgetful box. What fascinates you is how quickly the system trains you. One good tip and one fast drink, and you are already calculating, already planning to tip Sal again so he remembers your face, already thinking of him as someone you have a relationship with. He has dozens of these relationships running at once and remembers exactly none of the faces past closing time. But in the moment, the illusion is total. You feel known. You paid to feel known. You will pay again. Sal, in a rare quiet moment, tells you the only thing he ever tells newcomers, which is that the first tip is an investment and the rest are rent. Tip big once to get noticed, he says, then keep paying to stay noticed, and never imagine for a second that the noticing is free. A beautiful stranger waves a folded bill down the bar. Sal glances away, and his attention is brought out from under you, mid-sentence, the relationship suspended until you outbid the room again. You carry your overpriced drink back into the crowd, lighter in the wallet and oddly satisfied, having successfully purchased 30 seconds of a stranger's favour. The bar runs all night on exactly this, 1,000 small auctions for the bartender's eyes, every one of them paid in cash that vanishes without a trace. You sip your sandcastle of a cocktail and understand that here, as at the door, as everywhere in this building, the thing you are really buying is the feeling of mattering, sold by the drink, payable on demand. You take a job here, on the other side of the glamour, clearing glasses and wiping spills while the party happens around you. The pay is low, but the floor is generous in cash, and you quickly understand that the staff sees everything the guests are too polished to notice. You watch the same faces arrive ruined and leave worse. You learn which corners to avoid, which managers to never make eye contact with, and exactly how much money moves through a room like this in a single sweaty night. The job itself is invisible by design. You move through the crowd in a plain, cheap and anonymous shirt, collecting empties, wiping the sticky residue of spilled cocktails off every flat surface, and the guest looks straight through you as if you were furniture that occasionally moves. This is fine. Invisibility is the job. A good busboy is a thing the night does not notice, and you get very good, very fast, at being a thing the night does not notice. Being invisible turns out to be the best seat in the building. From down here, plain shirted, and beneath everyone's attention you see all of it. You see who is on what and how much. You see the famous face that is held together with powder and willpower. You see the deals in the corners, the arguments that get smoothed over, the people who arrive glittering at midnight and get poured into cabs at dawn as a different and sadder substance entirely. The guests perform for each other. They do not bother performing for the furniture. The staff has its own map of the room, and a veteran busboy named Frank draws it for you on your first night in a low voice. These corners you clear quickly and leave. That manager you never look at directly. That door you do not go through and do not ask about. Frank does not explain the reasons, and you learn not to ask, because the not asking is clearly part of how Frank has stayed employed and unbothered for as long as he has. Frank wipes down a table that was already clean, then tips his chin at the door you must never use, and you memorize. The cash is the part that genuinely stuns you. You knew the drinks were expensive. You did not grasp, until you were inside the machine sweeping its floor, the sheer physical volume of money moving through a single night. It is everywhere, in every hand, at every counter, a flood of bills that never slows. Frank tells you, flatly, that more cash crosses this floor in one night than he made in a year at his last job, and that almost none of it will ever appear in a single official document anywhere. He says it without judgment. It is simply the weather he works in. Frank, on a smoke break in the alley, gives you the only career advice he has. See everything, he says, and remember none of it out loud. The staff who last are the staff who treat their own eyes like the coat check, holding things safely and handing nothing back without a very good reason. Then he stubs out his cigarette, and the two of you go back inside to be furniture again, to clear and wipe and witness, beneath the notice of a room that would be horrified to know how much it is seen. You finish your shift as the sky goes grey, your shirt soaked through, your pockets surprisingly heavy with tips the cash floor handed up to even the furniture. You have made more in one night than the job's official wage suggests is possible, and you understand exactly why. And you understand exactly why no one writes it down. You walk home knowing the real architecture of the place now, having seen it from the bottom, having been taught the one rule that runs the whole building. See everything. Say nothing. Sweep. You figure out, the way everyone eventually does, that the man who actually owns the place is not the cheerful host smiling at celebrities. There is another tier above that, quieter and harder, and the staff refers to it carefully or not at all. Certain envelopes leave the building, certain problems get solved without police. You learn to recognize the difference between the people who run the party and the people who own the cash, and you learn that asking which is the fastest way to be reassigned to somewhere you cannot see. The cheerful host out front, the one working the rope and charming the famous, is real and important, and not, it turns out, the top of anything. Above him is a quieter arrangement, men who are quiet, hard and humorless, who do not dance, do not pose, and do not appear in the photographs. They arrive through doors you were warned not to use, sit in rooms you were warned not to enter, and leave without anyone announcing them. They have the collective warmth of a tax audit and the dress sense of a funeral nobody is enjoying. The staff lowers its voice around them, or, more often, simply does not mention them at all. You learn the signs the way you learned everything else here, by watching. A particular man arrives and Frank, your busboy mentor, goes very still and very focused on a glass that was already clean. A certain envelope changes hands near the office, thick and unremarked, and everyone nearby develops a sudden interest in the middle distance. A problem that would send a normal business to the police, a fight, a debt, a theft, gets resolved overnight, quietly, without any uniform ever appearing. The problem simply stops being a problem. The attraction, once you see it, is obvious. A business that runs entirely on untraceable cash is the single most useful thing a certain kind of organization can own. Money with no clean past needs somewhere to go and turn respectable, and a club that swallows floods of unrecorded bills every night is, to the right organization, less a nightclub than an enormous, very loud washing machine. The dancing is genuine. The dancing is also, from a certain quiet office upstairs, a very effective explanation for why so much cash exists in the first place. There is a man, somewhere above all this, who is said to have his hand in dozens of places like this one across the city, bars and restaurants and clubs, many of them rooms exactly like this. He does not appear. He does not need to. His interest is expressed through the quiet men with the envelopes, through the problems that vanish, through the careful way everyone talks around the subject. You never see him. You feel the gravity of him in how the room organizes itself around an absence. Frank gives you the rule, the same way he gives you every rule, in a low, flat voice in the alley. There are two businesses in this building, he says. One of them is the party, and you can talk about that all you like. The other one owns the party, and you do not talk about that at all. Not to guests, not to friends, not to each other. You nod. You have already absorbed it. The not knowing is not ignorance here. It is a job requirement, and a form of personal safety. You go back to clearing glasses. Careful now in a new way. Careful with your eyes. Careful with the doors. Careful with the questions you let yourself even think near the wrong men. The party roars on around you, bright and oblivious. Somewhere above it, in a quiet room, the other business does its quiet accounting. You sweep between the two of them, employed by both whether you like it or not, having learned the deepest rule of the building, which is that the cheerful man at the door was never the one you needed to be careful about. You start noticing, from your low vantage point clearing tables, that the money does not all go where money is supposed to go. The cover charges, the coat checks, the marked up drinks all arrive in bills, and bills are forgetful. Bags of it move through back rooms. Some of it goes into the register, and a great deal of it you suspect simply goes elsewhere. Nobody explains this to you because the not explaining is the whole point. You are working inside a machine designed to lose track of its own income on purpose. The bills come in faster than any register could honestly absorb. You watch the cash pile up at the door, at the coat check, at the bar, and you watch it get gathered, and you watch where it goes after that, which is the interesting part. Some of it, a respectable showing, goes into the official till to make the official story plausible. The rest goes into bags, and the bags go through doors, and the doors close, and the math is never spoken of again. The register sees maybe a polite third of the night, and has been trained not to ask about the other two. Frank sets a tray of empties down between us and, on a slow night, lets one thing slip. He says the building takes in far more than it ever reports, that the gap between the real number and the official number is enormous, and that the gap is not an accident or a leak. The gap is the design. A business that wanted to pay its honest share would count carefully and write everything down. This business is built, from the rope to the register, to make careful, honest, and accurate counting impossible. The owners have apparently grown comfortable, even boastful, about how much the place makes, which strikes you, sweeping the floor, as the one genuinely stupid thing in an otherwise clever scheme. A machine built to be invisible only works if everyone keeps quiet about how well it runs. Bragging about a fortune you are specifically hiding is the kind of mistake that ends with men in plain suits asking very specific questions. You keep this thought to yourself, because keeping thoughts to yourself is, by now, your core professional skill. There is a disgruntled feeling among some of the staff too, the ordinary resentment of people who do the work and see the fortune and take home a wage. Most of them swallow it. But you notice that a machine which cheats this openly creates, in its own employees, a small standing population of people who know exactly how the trick works and feel they were shorted. Each of them is a witness the operation has chosen to annoy. Each of them is a phone call waiting to happen. Frank, predictably, has a rule for this too. Never be the one who counts it, he says, and never be the one who resents it out loud. The people who handle the bags and the people who complain about the bags are the two groups who eventually get hurt. Be neither. Clear your tables, take your tips, and let the cash disappear into whatever darkness it disappears into, because the darkness is not yours and the trouble that finds it will not be yours either, as long as you never reached for any of it. You take his advice, because Frank is still here and unbothered, and that is its own argument. You go back to the tables, and the cash goes back to the bags, and the bags go back through the doors, into the gap between the real number and the reported one, a gap wide enough to swallow a fortune and confident enough, lately, to brag. You sweep. You say nothing. And you file away the quiet certainty that a machine this greedy and this loud about it is a machine that is, somewhere down the line, going to attract exactly the attention it was built to avoid. You assume that getting past the door made everyone equal inside, and the room corrects this assumption within minutes. There are tears in here too. The celebrities float to a raised area you will never be waved into. The beautiful regulars get the bartender's first glance. Then there is everyone else. The people who made it in, but did not arrive as somebody, dancing slightly harder to prove they belong. The rope at the door was not the last gate of the night. It was only the first one you happened to see. You genuinely believed, walking in, that the door was the hard part and the inside was the reward. For 1 hour that belief survived. Then you started noticing where people went and where they did not, and you understood that the building is not one room but a stack of invisible ranks, each with its own rope, each one a little higher and a little less reachable than the last. You cleared the first gate. There were more gates. There are always more gates. The top tier floats. There is a raised area, lightly guarded, where the genuinely famous arrange themselves to be seen without being approached, and the guarding is done by a man whose entire job is being a softer, deadlier version of Steve at the door. You will not be waved up there. You were not born up there, you did not arrive up there, and no amount of dancing tonight will carry you up there. You can look. Looking is permitted. Looking is, in fact, the service those guests are providing the room. The next tier down is the beautiful, recognized and untouchable regulars, the ones the staff knows by face, the ones Sal serves first and Steve waves through without a glance. They are not famous, but they are recognized, which in this building is its own kind of wealth. They move with the ease of people who never wonder whether they belong, because the not wondering is precisely what marks them. You can spot the difference instantly. They dance like the floor is theirs. You dance like you are auditioning to rent a corner of it. And then there is you and everyone like you, the largest group and the lowest, the ones who made it past the rope but arrived as nobody in particular. You can tell your own people by a certain extra effort, a slightly harder dance, a slightly brighter laugh, the small constant labour of demonstrating that you deserve to be here. The genuinely secure do not perform belonging. Only the uncertain perform belonging, and the room is full of us, dancing a half step too eagerly under the lights. Estelle leans on the rail beside you. She has occupied your exact tier for years and made peace with it, and she explains the layout with the dry authority of a tour guide at a place she has stopped finding impressive. The trick, she says, is to enjoy the room you are actually in and stop staring up at the room you are not. The people staring up never have any fun. The people who dance where they stand have the best night in the building, and nobody up on the platform is having half as good a time as they are pretending to. You take Estelle's advice and turn back to your own patch of floor, to the people on your level, and you stop, for a while, looking up. The dancing gets better immediately. The half step of eagerness relaxes into something closer to actual joy. You are still on the bottom tier of a building made entirely of ropes, but you have located the one freedom available down here, which is to stop auditioning for the rope above you and simply dance, badly and happily, inside the gate you already cleared. You climb the stairs to the balcony for a better view of the floor and find that the balcony has its own purpose, only loosely related to viewing. It is dark up here on purpose. Couples and groups arrange themselves in the shadows, and the social agreement is that you saw nothing and you certainly did not stare. You learn fast where to put your eyes and how to pass through without disturbing anyone's evening. The club is a building that has quietly assigned a different function to every level, and this is the one nobody prints on a flyer. You went up the stairs for an innocent reason, to look down at the dance floor from above and see the whole moving organism of it at once. You get that view, briefly, and it is genuinely beautiful. 400 people moving as one lit creature beneath the spinning ball. Then your eyes adjust to the dark of the balcony itself, and you understand that you have wandered into a different room with a different agreement, and that the view of the floor was never why most people came up here. The darkness is deliberate, engineered, and maintained. Downstairs, everything is lights and strobes and being seen. Up here, the lights deliberately do not reach, and in the shadows, people have arranged themselves into the kind of company they did not come up here to keep quietly. The balcony is the part of the building where the relentless looking of the dance floor is finally switched off, where the one consistent rule is that the watching stops at the top of the stairs. You learn the etiquette in about 4 seconds, because the etiquette is not subtle. You do not stare. You do not react. You find a neutral place to put your eyes, you keep moving if you are moving, and you extend to everyone up here the same courtesy you would want extended to you, which is total, deliberate, practiced blindness. A man near the railing catches you being a newcomer about it, gives you a small flat look that says you saw nothing, and you arrange your face to agree completely. You saw nothing. You are excellent at having seen nothing. The trick, you learn, is to keep your gaze moving and your face politely vacant, like a doorman who works for everyone at once. There is, underneath the easy comedy of it, something you recognize as genuinely important to the people up here. For a lot of them, this dark balcony is one of the only places in the entire city where they can be close to who they want to be close to without a stranger deciding to make it a problem or a crime. The darkness is not only permissive, it is protective. It is privacy purchased in a world that did not, outside these walls, reliably grant them any. You stop finding it funny and start finding it almost tender. Vivienne leans on the rail beside you, older and watchful, a regular up here, and offers a single dry line. "Everybody needs one dark room in their life," she says, and looks back out over the bright floor below. She does not elaborate. She does not need to. The sentence sits there, light and heavy at once, and you let it land and do not reach for anything to add to it. You take one last look at the beautiful lit organism dancing below, then pass back through the dark balcony the way you were taught, eyes neutral, face agreeable, having seen nothing and intending to remember it that way. You go back down the stairs into the lights and the looking, into the floor where everyone performs, being seen. Behind you, the dark room stays dark, doing its quiet protective work, one more function the building assigned itself and never once advertised. You follow the scene to its other address, the bathhouse, which in this decade is half sex club and half cabaret. There is a famous one in a hotel basement where a young singer performs in a towel between the goings-on, accompanied by a piano player who will also become famous. You check your clothes, you get a towel and a key, and you enter a place operating under a sexual freedom that has not yet met any reason to be careful. The rules here are different again, and again nobody hands them to you. The place sits in the basement of a grand old hotel, which gives the whole enterprise a strange double life. Upstairs, respectable guests sleep in respectable rooms. Downstairs, in the warm, damp, and tiled steam, an entirely different institution runs all night, and the two coexist with the polite mutual blindness you have come to recognize as the era's default setting. You hand over your clothes, and an attendant named Hal hands you a towel and a numbered key as you step into a heat that fogs your glasses and your judgment at the same rate. The famous part, the part that will end up in the history books, is the cabaret. There is a small stage down here, and on a good night a young singer performs on it wearing not much more than a towel herself, belting out numbers to a room of men in various states of undress, accompanied by a piano player who is also young and also about to be enormously famous. It is one of the strangest launch pads for two major careers anyone could design, a bathhouse stage between the steam rooms, and it is, by every account, a genuinely great show. The sexual culture itself is candid to a degree that startles you, and it is described, by the regulars, with a matter-of-factness that startles you more. The arithmetic gets quoted casually. Go into the steam with 20 men, someone tells you, and within half an hour you will have had contact with half of them. People recount leaving after an evening involving 150 different others the way you might recount a busy day at work. There is no shame attached and no caution attached, because in this specific window of history there is no known reason for either. You do not know that, of course. Nobody in the steam knows that. The narrator knows it, hovering at the edge of the scene, watching a room full of people enjoy a liberty that history has already quietly scheduled for catastrophe, and the narrator says nothing, because there is nothing to say to them that they could hear or use. They are happy. They are safe by everything they understand. The thing that is coming is still years out and entirely invisible, and they dance and laugh and sing in the warm fog without a single reason not to. The singer finishes her set to enormous applause, takes her towel and her bow, and the piano player grins, and the room roars, and for that moment the whole improbable institution feels like exactly what its patrons believe it to be. A sanctuary, a place of pleasure and performance and total acceptance carved out of a city that offered them little of any of it. You applaud too. It would be churlish not to. The show was wonderful and the welcome was real. You collect your clothes eventually and climb the stairs back up to the respectable hotel and the ordinary street, leaving the warm fog and the cabaret and the candid arithmetic behind you. The bathhouse keeps running below the sleeping guests, all night, every night, in its brief window of consequence-free joy. You carry up the stairs a single quiet thought that you cannot quite shake, that you have just visited a happy room standing directly in the path of something it cannot see, and that its happiness, tonight, is entirely genuine and entirely uninsured. You hear about the other kind of room, the one with no bar, no bottle service, and no rope full of strangers, and you set about getting a membership. This is the descendant of a loft party that started on Valentine's Day, where the host served fruit juice instead of liquor, and the crowd was black and gay and devoted. There is no liquor license because there is no liquor, which is partly philosophy and partly strategy. Getting in requires a card and a name that someone already inside will speak for. You are learning the difference between a scene and a congregation. The whole approach is the opposite of the famous club, and the opposition is the point. There is no celebrity rope, no doorman casting a salad, no quiet men with envelopes upstairs. There is a card, a member list, and a culture that decided early it would rather be small and real than large and famous. You cannot tip your way in. You cannot dress your way in. Someone who already belongs has to vouch for you, attach their own standing to your name, and only then does the card appear. The history of it traces back to one man and one loft, where, on a Valentine's Day at the start of the decade, he strung up balloons, filled bowls with fruit juice, and invited a few hundred people to dance. There was no bar because he served no alcohol, which meant he needed no license, which meant the authorities had far less excuse to come through the door. It was philosophy and strategy braided together. The fruit punch was both a genuine choice about what the night should be and a quiet legal shield for the people dancing under it. When you finally get inside, vouched for and carded, the difference hits you immediately, in the body. There is no one performing here. Nobody is auditioning for a tear. Nobody is buying the bartender's eyes, because there is no bartender and there are no tears. The crowd is black and brown and gay and utterly uninterested in being seen by anyone outside its own circle. They did not come to be photographed. They came to dance, with a seriousness that makes the famous club look, in retrospect, like a very expensive costume party. The sound is somehow even better than the famous room, which you did not think possible, because here the sound is the entire point and not a backdrop for being fabulous. The system is worshipped. The records are chosen with a quiet, serious, and almost liturgical devotion. And the dancing is not a performance of joy, but the real article, bodies moving for their own sake, for the music's sake, with nobody watching and nobody to impress. You understand slowly that you have been doing it wrong all along, in all the famous rooms, where the dancing was always partly aimed at someone else's approval. Theo nods you inside. The quiet regular who vouched for you explains the etiquette, which is less about rules than about respect. You protect the list, he says. You bring no one who would treat this like a tourist attraction. You understand that the small size and the closed door are not snobbery but survival, the way this community keeps a room of its own in a city that keeps trying to take its rooms away. You nod, and this time the nod is not currency. It is a promise. You stay until the early morning, dancing for no audience, in the room where it began, carded and vouched for and quietly changed by it. The fruit punch sits in its bowls. The sound holds the room like a hand. There is no rope, no tier, no quiet office upstairs, only a few hundred people who built this and kept it and let you, on someone's word, briefly in. You leave understanding the difference, Theo meant, between a scene that sells belonging by the drink and a congregation that simply, gravely, belongs. You discover that the night does not end so much as relocate. When the main club finally dims, the truly committed peel off to an after-hours room, an unmarked door, a loft, a place with no sign and no closing time written anywhere. The sun is coming up over the avenues, and you are walking toward a second venue with a small, determined crowd who treat sleep as an optional and slightly embarrassing habit. You are entering the part of the culture that the magazines never photograph, because the magazines have gone to bed. The main club closes, or at least dims its ambitions, and you expect the crowd to disperse into the dawn like normal people ending a normal night. Instead, you watch a hard core of them gather, exchange a few quiet words, and set off together with the unmistakable air of people who are not done. You fall in with them, partly out of curiosity, and partly because going home feels, suddenly, like an admission of weakness you are not ready to make. The night, it turns out, has a sequel. The destination is an unmarked door on a street where nothing is open, leading to a loft or a basement or a back room with no sign, no listing, and no posted hours, because posted hours are for places that intend to close. You would never find it on your own. It is passed person to person, a whispered address, a knock, a face at the door that recognizes someone in your group and lets the whole cluster through. The secrecy is not for glamour here. It is because what runs all the way past dawn does so without much in the way of permission. The sun is genuinely coming up now, grey then gold over the avenues, and there is something deeply strange about walking toward more night while the city around you wakes into morning. Delivery trucks are out. A man is opening a newsstand. Ordinary people with ordinary days are beginning them, and you pass through the middle of all that ordinariness in last night's open shirt and ruined feet, heading the wrong direction in time, toward a room that has decided the sun is optional. Inside, the crowd is smaller, stranger, and more serious. This is the residue of the night. The people for whom the famous club was merely the opening act, and they have a quality you have not seen before, a kind of stripped-down devotion. The performing is over. Nobody here has the energy left to audition, and so what is left is just the dancing itself. Looser, weirder, more genuine, a small congregation of the truly committed moving in a room the daylight is not allowed to enter. A man named Des, who appears to have not slept since approximately the start of the decade, gives you the after-hours philosophy without being asked. The real night, he says, starts when the tourists go home, and you are a tourist until the first time you watch the sun come up from the wrong side of a closed door. He says it kindly, a welcome more than an insult. Des hands you a paper cup of something and tells you to stop checking the time, because the time is not invited. You stop checking the time. You let the morning go on without you behind the unmarked door, dancing in the residue of the night with the small devoted crowd who never learned to stop. Somewhere outside, the city is fully awake now, going to work, living its daylight life. In here it is still, somehow, the same endless night it has been for hours, sealed and secret and unphotographed. And you are finally, for better or worse, on the inside of the part nobody writes down. You wake up on Sunday, eventually, and the night sends its full bill. Your feet are wrecked from the platforms, your ears are still ringing with a phantom kick drum, and the chemistry that carried you is now charging interest. The apartment is too bright. Water tastes like the best thing ever invented. You replay the night in fragments and cannot account for several hours of it. This is the recovery day, the unglamorous flip side of the glamour, and the regulars have a whole quiet ritual for surviving it that nobody discusses out loud. The first thing you become aware of is your feet, which spent the night up on a platform and now intend to be heard about it. They throb in a way that feels almost moral, a punishment precisely fitted to the crime of vanity. Then the ears report in, ringing with a high, thin tone that is the ghost of the kick drum, the bass that conducted your chest all night still echoing inside a head that very much wishes it would stop. You lie still and take the inventory. The inventory is long. The apartment is too bright, aggressively, personally too bright, as if the sun found out where you live and came specifically for you. You pull the blanket over your face. The chemistry that carried you so beautifully through the small hours has reversed its position entirely and is now charging interest on every borrowed minute of energy. And the interest rate, you are learning, is steep. What felt last night like flight feels this afternoon like the bill for flight, presented in full, payable now. Water becomes the most important substance in the world. You drink a glass, and it tastes like something invented by a genius, cold and clean and miraculous. And you understand for the first time why the regulars talk about water the way some people talk about religion. Your body, rattled, drained, and hollowed, wants exactly three things: water and darkness and time. And it wants them with an urgency that overrides every other plan you had for the day. The day had no other plans anyway. The day, it turns out, was always going to be this. You try to reconstruct the night and find the tape has gaps. There are vivid fragments, the bass, the moon, a turn you actually landed, a face at the after-hours door, and then there are stretches that are simply not there, hours your memory declined to record. It is not frightening, exactly, but it is sobering, a quiet evidence of how far you went, presented as a blank space where a chunk of your own evening used to be. You do not examine the blank too closely. Nobody does. That is part of the ritual too. The regulars, you have learned, treat this day as a known and managed phase rather than a surprise. There is no party here, none of the glamour, just the unglamorous and entirely predictable other half of the deal, the body collecting what the night put on credit. Carla manages it like everything else, with water and quiet and a refusal to make any decisions before evening. Carla pours a glass of water and sets it where you can reach it without sitting up. The recovery is not discussed at the club because it is the opposite of the club, the dim private wreckage that pays for the bright public joy, and the unspoken etiquette is that you handle it alone and you do not complain. You drink another glass of the miraculous water, pull the blanket back over your eyes, and let the day do what the day is for. The kick drum ghost slowly fades. The feet quiet down to a dull report. By evening, you will feel almost human, and by next weekend, you will have forgotten the whole bill entirely and be standing in front of a mirror again, undoing one more button, ready to borrow against your body all over again. The ritual holds because the forgetting holds. You close your eyes, you let the come down finish collecting, and you do not complain. You learn to read the room for a specific kind of tension, the one that arrives before a raid. In this decade, the law still treats a great deal of what happens here as criminal, and the people most at risk are the ones the scene was built to protect. You watch the regulars develop a sixth sense for an undercover, a sudden stillness that passes through a crowd like a draft. There is a choreography to a raid, a who runs and who freezes and who simply keeps dancing, and you are quietly being taught your part. The tension has a particular flavour, distinct from any other in the building. It is not the desperation of the rope or the eagerness of the floor. It is colder, quieter, and sharper, a sudden alertness that ripples outward from whoever noticed first. You feel it before you understand it, a draft moving through the crowd, heads turning a fraction, conversations dropping half a tone. Something has entered the room that does not belong, and the regulars knew it before you did. It helps to remember what the law actually thinks of this place. In this decade, a great deal of what happens here, who dances with whom, who loves whom, what gets passed in the bathroom, is still treated by the city as criminal, and the people most exposed to that judgment are precisely the people the scene exists to shelter. The famous club gets a measure of protection that the small rooms do not, but no room is entirely safe, because safety, for this crowd, has never been something the law reliably provided. The regulars have developed a sense for the undercover that borders on the supernatural. There is a way a planted stranger holds himself, a wrongness in how he is not quite dancing, not quite drinking, watching the room the way no one who came to enjoy the room would watch it. A woman named Pearl can spot one across a crowded floor in seconds, and when she does not panic. Pearl leans in close, a touch on an arm, a quiet word, a look, and the knowledge spreads through the regulars like the draft you felt earlier. Then comes the choreography, practiced and silent and grimly impressive. Some people drift toward exits without appearing to hurry. Some make small things disappear into pockets, into mouths, into the general dark. Some, the calmest and most experienced, simply keep dancing, because a floor full of people who all stopped at once is its own kind of confession, and the best cover for a room with something to hide is a room that looks like it has nothing to hide at all. Everyone has a part. You are quietly assigned yours, which is to keep dancing and follow Pearl's lead and ask nothing. Sometimes nothing happens. The stranger turns out to be just a stranger. The draft passes, the room exhales and resumes. And sometimes it is real, and the doors open hard, and the night turns in an instant from celebration into something that has to be survived. You witness one of the real ones, briefly. The lights coming up, the music cutting out, the awful exposed feeling of a sanctuary suddenly open to the people it was built to keep out. It does not last long. But it lasts long enough to teach you what the stakes under all the glitter actually are. You go home that night understanding the scene differently than you did. The rope and the cash and the chemistry are one layer. Underneath them is this: a community dancing inside a city that still considers its dancing a crime, holding joy in one hand and vigilance in the other, never able to fully put either down. You learned your small part in the choreography tonight. You hope not to need it. You suspect, now that you can feel the draft, that you will. You come to understand why people guard the door so fiercely, and it is not only snobbery. For many of the regulars, this room is one of the only places in the city where they can dance with whoever they like without a stranger deciding to make it their business. Outside these walls, the same behaviour can get you arrested or worse. Inside, for a few hours, the rules invert, and you are simply a person on a floor. The exclusivity that looks cruel from the street looks, from in here, a lot like protection. You spent your first nights here resenting the door the way everyone does, taking the rope as pure cruelty, a velvet machine for making people feel small, and some of it is exactly that. But after the raid, after Pearl and the draft and the choreography, you start to see the door from the inside, and from the inside it looks different. The same selectivity that humiliates the crowd on the sidewalk is also a filter, a way of deciding who gets to be in the room with the people the room is protecting. The thing the regulars are guarding is not glamour. It is the rarest commodity in their lives, which is a safe, private, and unwatched place to be themselves without supervision. Out on the street, a man dancing with a man is a risk, an arrest, an excuse for violence from a passing stranger who decides it is his business. In here, for a few hours, that arithmetic inverts completely. In here it is normal, unremarkable, safe. The walls do not just keep out the badly dressed and the aggressively boring, they keep the danger out too, and the danger, historically, has worn a great many ordinary faces, most of them smiling. You watch what the safety does to people, and it is genuinely moving once you know to look for it. There is a loosening that happens a few feet inside the door, a dropping of a vigilance so constant that its owners barely know they carry it until it lifts. People hold hands who could not hold hands on the sidewalk. People dance close who would be in danger dancing close anywhere with windows. The room gives them back something the city takes all day, and they spend it greedily, beautifully, for as long as the night holds. Theo shrugs when you raise it and says the thing plainly. People who have never needed a safe room, he says, only ever see the door as a snub. People who have needed one see it as a lock on the inside, the good kind, the kind you are grateful for. He does not say it bitterly. He says it the way you state a fact that you made peace with long ago, and it rearranges, permanently, how you will think about every rope you ever stand behind again. There is still cruelty in it. You do not pretend otherwise. The famous club uses the language of safety to sell exclusivity, dresses up snobbery and the borrowed dignity of protection, lets a doorman play sanctuary keeper for people who are never in any danger. The mechanism gets exploited, but underneath the exploitation is a real and serious need, older than the glamour, that the small guarded rooms answer honestly, and the famous rooms only imitate. You learn to tell the two apart, which is its own kind of education. You stand inside the door now with a different feeling than you had on the sidewalk weeks ago. You know what the wall is for. You know what it costs the people outside and what it gives the people inside. And you know that for some of the regulars beside you, this loud, bright, sweaty room is the single safest place they will stand all week. You dance. They dance. The wall holds. And the people it was built for keep their hands exactly where they want them. For a few more hours, behind a door, someone is still guarding. You start buying records, and you learn that the format itself was reinvented for this floor. The radio version of a song is too short to dance to, so a producer figured out how to stretch it across a bigger record that plays longer, louder, and with more bottom end. You flip through bins hunting for the extended mixes, the ones built for a room and not a car radio. The clerk knows exactly which pressing you mean. You are participating in an industry that quietly rebuilt its own products around what happens after midnight. The shop is a narrow place downtown, bins packed tight, the air thick with cardboard and old vinyl and the faint sweetness of dust. You came in looking for the song that destroyed you on the floor last weekend, and you quickly discover that the version you want is not the version on the radio. The radio cut is 3 minutes, built to fit between advertisements. The version that took the floor apart is twice that, and it lives on a different, larger record entirely. That larger record is the whole story. A producer, frustrated that the songs were too short to build a real dance arrangement, worked out how to stretch a track across a bigger disc, with wider grooves that hold more volume and far more low end. A record made not for a living room or a car, but for a sound system the size of a wall. It is the same insight as everything else in this culture, that the dance floor is not an afterthought to the music, but the thing the music should actually be built for. They redesigned the physical object around the room. The clerk, a calm encyclopedic man named Marcus, who seems to have personally heard every record ever pressed, knows exactly which version you mean before you finish describing it. You hum 4 bars, and he is already walking to a bin. Marcus pulls the extended mix, slides it from the sleeve, and checks it under the light, the vinyl catching a rainbow, and tells you which DJ broke it and at which club and roughly what hour of the night it works best. He is not selling you a record. He is inducting you into a body of knowledge. You begin to understand the shop as a kind of nerve centre. The DJs come here. The serious dancers come here. Marcus knows what is moving on which floors before the radio has any idea, because the radio is downstream of all this, picking up the songs months after rooms like the ones you dance in have already decided their fate. The whole official music industry, you realise, is quietly taking its cues from a handful of dance floors and a few clerks like Marcus who know what those floors are doing tonight. Marcus, ringing you up, offers the closest thing he has to a philosophy. The radio gives you the song, he says, but the 12-inch gives you the night, the whole arc of it, the build and the break, and the long, ecstatic stretch the radio is too impatient to allow. He taps the record once, a small benediction, and hands it across. He has sold 10,000 of these, and he still says it like it matters, because to him, and increasingly to you, it does. You step back out into the daylight with your paper sleeve of contraband, records built for a room rather than a radio, an entire format reverse-engineered from the needs of the dance floor. The industry has not noticed yet how completely the floor is leading it. Marcus has. The DJs have. And you, flipping a record over to read the long playing time with quiet satisfaction, have joined the small knowing population who understood, before the radio did, that the music was being rebuilt from the dance floor up. You take session work, because the records you dance to all night have to be manufactured by somebody during the day. You arrive at a studio and play the same four-on-the-floor pattern for hours, on track after track, for a flat fee and no share of anything that happens next. The producer wants it tight, fast, and finished by dinner. You watch your playing get pressed onto a record that will fill 1,000 floors, with your name nowhere on it. The glamour is downstream of a room full of tired professionals doing piecework. The studio is a windowless room with a clock, which is its own kind of joke given how much of your nightlife happens in windowless rooms without clocks. But this is the day side of the music, the factory floor, and the clock here is the boss. You set up, you get a level, and you settle in to play the same steady four-on-the-floor pattern, the heartbeat under every record on every dance floor in the city, over and over, take after take, for hours. The work is real work, skilled and exacting and dull in the specific way that only skilled work can be dull. The producer, a brisk man named Lenny with a cigarette permanently going and a schedule that will not bend, wants it tight, even, machine steady, and finished by dinner because there is another session booked after yours. There is no room for inspiration. There is room for precision and speed, delivered on demand, the same groove laid down flawlessly until Lenny grunts that it is good and moves to the next track. You are paid a flat fee for the day, and that is the entire transaction. You will not see a share of the record. You will not see a share of the next 1,000 pressings, the radio plays, the floors it fills, the money it makes. You play the part, you take the envelope, you go home. The record goes on without you, to become whatever it becomes, and your name appears nowhere on it, because session players are the invisible hands of the whole industry, the furniture of the studio the way the busboy is the furniture of the club. You have seen this exact magic trick before, from the other end. The DJ invents the seamless mix for a coat check wage. The dancers build the whole culture in rooms they have to badge into like a power plant. And now you lay down the literal heartbeat of the music for a flat fee, and watch it get carried off to fill rooms you will pay a cover to re-enter on Friday. The money goes up in the elevator. You take the stairs. Lenny is not a villain about it, which somehow makes it worse. He is fair, he pays on time, he respects your playing, and he operates entirely inside a system that simply does not include the session player in the upside, and never has, and was not built by him. Lenny shrugs about it when you raise it, mid-cigarette, between takes. That is the business, he says. You get your fee, the singer gets the fame, the label gets the money, and the bass player gets to do it again tomorrow. He is not wrong, and he is not happy, and he lights another cigarette and counts in the next track. You finish by dinner, as promised. Lenny pays you, thanks you, and is already setting up for the next session before you have packed your gear. You step out of the windowless room into the evening with your flat fee in your pocket and your playing pressed permanently onto a record that no longer has anything to do with you. In a week you will hear that exact groove take a dance floor apart, and you will say nothing, and you will pay the cover like everyone else, and you will dance on top of your own uncredited work. You start hearing a different voice creeping into your week, the rock radio DJ who has decided this music is the enemy. He was doing fine until his station switched formats and his job changed underneath him, and now he has a grudge with a microphone and an audience. He mocks the records you love between songs, builds bits around hating them, and finds that hating disco is the most popular thing he has ever done. You can feel a mood gathering out there, somewhere past the clubs, that has nothing friendly in mind. You hear him first by accident, spinning the radio dial in a borrowed car, and the voice stops you. It is loud, aggrieved, and funny in the mean way that mean things often are, and it is aimed directly at the music that has organised your entire life. He plays a snippet of a disco hit and then makes a noise like a record being strangled, and somewhere out there an audience laughs, and you feel a small cold thing arrive in your chest that you cannot quite name yet. The man has a story, and the story matters. He was a rock DJ, doing fine, until his station abruptly switched its format to all disco and his job dissolved under him, and a person replaced at work by a drum machine does not, as a rule, go on to review that drum machine fairly. He has a genuine grievance, narrow and personal, and he has found a way to turn it into content. The Grudge has a microphone now, and the microphone has an audience, and the audience, it turns out, was waiting for permission to feel exactly this way. That is the part that unsettles you, standing outside the clubs for once and listening to the wider city. The hatred is popular. It is the most popular thing the man has ever done. Every time he mocks the music, more people tune in to agree with him, and you can hear, underneath the jokes, a resentment gathering, broad and eager and growing, made of people who were never in your rooms and never felt the bass in their chests, and have decided with surprising heat that they despise the whole thing. You tell yourself at first that it is only about music, guitars versus drum machines, a matter of taste, the eternal argument about whether the new thing is real, and some of it genuinely is that. But you keep listening, and you start to notice which records get singled out and which crowds get sneered at, and a shape begins to show through the jokes that is not really about tempo at all. The man says disco. You begin to suspect, with a sinking feeling, that a lot of his audience hears a different word underneath it. Because the music he is mocking did not come from nowhere. It came from the rooms you dance in, the rooms built by black and gay and Latino people who made the entire thing in spaces they had to protect with membership cards and door choreography. And the anger gathering on the radio, broad and white and suburban and furious, is aimed, whether it admits it or not, at exactly those people, using the music as a respectable stand-in for a hatred that could no longer be said out loud directly. The slogan is a costume. You are starting to see what it is wearing over. You turn the radio off, eventually, and drive on in silence, the cold thing still sitting in your chest. The music that gave you the safest rooms of your life, that gave a whole community a place to exhale, has become, out here in the wider world, a punchline and a target. You can feel it building towards something, gathering its laughing crowds, sharpening its harmless little jokes into something with an edge. You do not yet know what it builds toward. You only know, driving home toward the clubs, that it is coming, and that it was never really about the music at all. You begin seeing 3 words turn up everywhere you go, on t-shirts, on bumper stickers, on bedsheets painted and hung at concerts. Disco sucks. At first it reads like a joke about music, a matter of guitars versus drum machines, and some of it genuinely is. But you notice which records get named and which crowds get sneered at, and you start to feel the shape of something underneath the slogan that is not really about tempo at all. The phrase travels faster than any single song ever did, and it is picking up passengers. The slogan is everywhere now, and it has the awful efficiency of all great slogans. 2 words, blunt, catchy, and portable, that fit on anything and require no further thought. You see it on a t-shirt on the subway. You see it on a bumper sticker on a van that has clearly lost other arguments. You see it painted on a bedsheet and hung over a railing at a rock concert, enormous and proud, and the crowd beneath it roars its agreement. The phrase has escaped the radio and entered the world, and it is multiplying faster than any song you ever chased through Marcus's bins. For a while you keep granting it the benign reading, because the benign reading is comfortable and partly true. Some of this really is just musical tribalism, the ancient argument between people who want guitars and people who want a beat, no deeper than any other argument about taste. Plenty of the people wearing the shirt would tell you, honestly, that they just think the music is silly, and they would mean it, and they would not be lying. Exactly. But you cannot unsee what you have started to see. You watch which records get named when people sneer, and which crowds get described, and the descriptions have a tell. The music being mocked is the music made by the people in your rooms, the black and brown and gay people who built the whole thing, and the sneering, more and more, reaches past the records to the people, with a curl to it that no argument about drum machines has ever had. The slogan says one thing, a growing number of the mouths saying it mean another. It is a perfect little vehicle for that. A person cannot, by this point in the decade, stand up in a public square and say the ugly thing out loud, not without losing his job and his dinner invitations. But that same person can wear a shirt that says disco sucks and laugh and point at a culture and express the whole ugly thing safely, deniably, as a harmless opinion about music. The slogan launders the hatred the way the club launders the cash, turning something that could not be said cleanly into something that can be worn proudly. You bring it up with Theo. He has seen more cycles of this than you have, and Theo nods slowly, not surprised, which is somehow the worst part. He has watched this culture's enemies learn over and over to dress their hostility in something acceptable, and he recognizes the costume the moment it appears. They always find a word that means the thing without saying the thing, he says, flatly. This time the word is disco. He does not seem afraid. He seems tired, the specific tiredness of someone who has watched a familiar danger put on a new outfit. You start noticing the slogan everywhere now that you cannot stop noticing it, and each sighting lands a little colder than the last. The music that built your safest rooms has become a thing people destroy on t-shirts for fun, and the destruction is popular and gleeful and travelling fast and aimed, under its harmless costume, at people you have come to love. You do not yet know where a hatred like this goes when it gets large enough. You only sense, watching the bedsheets multiply, that moods like this do not stay on t-shirts forever, and that yours is not the side currently gathering a crowd. You realise the music has stopped being a place you go and become a thing you cannot escape. After one enormous movie and its soundtrack every record company in the country wants in. There is disco on every station, disco versions of rock songs, a disco arrangement of a movie theme, even children's television releasing disco novelty records. The thing that used to live in a few protected rooms is now wallpaper in supermarkets and dentist offices. You watch the music get loved to the point of exhaustion, which, you sense, is a dangerous amount of love. The tipping point was one movie, one enormous movie, with one enormous soundtrack, and after that the dam simply broke. The film about a Brooklyn kid who lives for Saturday nights took the underground thing you loved and made it the most profitable sound on earth, and every record company in the country, smelling the money, rushed in at once to manufacture as much of it as the presses could hold. Overnight, the careful, protected thing became an industrial product, stamped out by the ton. Now you cannot get away from it. It is on every radio station, not just the ones that played it before, but all of them. The format that fired the angry rock DJ spreading until it is simply the air. There are disco versions of rock songs, performed by rock acts who clearly resent every note. There is a disco arrangement of a famous movie space theme, which becomes a hit, which is the kind of thing that should not exist, and now does. Even children's television puts out disco novelty records. The sound has gone everywhere a sound can go. You hear it in supermarkets, pushing a cart down an aisle while a thumping 4 on the floor sells canned goods. You hear it in a dentist's waiting room, the heartbeat that took apart your dance floor now reduced to soothing background mush while someone waits to have a tooth pulled. It is wallpaper now. The thing that meant safety and release and a place to exhale has become the bland sonic paint they put on the walls of every ordinary place, drained, flattened, and emptied of everything that made it matter. Marcus, behind the counter at the record shop, watches the saturation with a clerk's clear-eyed dread. Marcus holds a cash-in record, turns it over, and sets it back without a word. "Too much," he says, shaking his head at a bin of cynical cash in records that labels are pumping out with no love and no understanding. "When something this good gets this big this fast," he says, "it does not get to stay big. It gets used up, and then it gets resented, and then people decide they hate the thing they cannot stop hearing, and they punish it for being everywhere." He has watched fads die before. He knows the shape of an overdose. Marcus called it an overdose weeks ago, and you are only now watching the patient start to sweat. A thing people choose to love can survive almost anything. A thing forced on people until they are sick of it builds a debt of resentment, and the resentment has somewhere to go, because the angry man on the radio and the gleeful slogan on the bedsheets are standing right there, ready to receive it. The saturation is not just exhausting the music, it is loading the gun that the backlash is going to fire. You walk past a store playing your music to no one, a beautiful record reduced to retail mush, and you feel the whole thing tilting towards something bad. The love was real once, in the rooms, with the crowds who needed it. This is not that. This is the love turned industrial, spread too thin, pushed too hard, curdling in real time into the exhaustion that hatred feeds on. You sense, walking home, that a culture loved this loudly and this carelessly is a culture being set up, and that the people who will pay for the setup are not the supermarkets or the labels, but the rooms where it all began. You hear about the promotion in Chicago and almost cannot believe it is real. A baseball stadium is offering near-free admission to anyone who brings a disco record to be destroyed between games of a doubleheader. You picture it as a publicity stunt, a small fire, a few thousand people. What actually happens is a crate of records detonated in center field, a crowd far past capacity, and thousands of people pouring onto the grass until the game has to be forfeited. You understand, watching the footage, that this stopped being about music. The premise alone tells you how far the contempt has traveled. A baseball team, an ordinary professional baseball team, has partnered with the angry radio man to host an evening built entirely around destroying records, and the admission is almost free, a token price plus a disco record to feed to the bonfire. You hear the details and keep waiting for the part that makes it a normal promotion, and the part never comes. The whole event is the destruction. That is the draw. That is what they are selling. The team expected a modest crowd, the kind of number a slow Thursday doubleheader usually pulls. The park was built for approximately 40,000. What they got was a biblical flood, far past the stadium's capacity, tens of thousands of people, with thousands more climbing fences and pouring in after the gates were shut. The size of it is the first real shock. Then the destruction itself, which is worse than you imagined. It is not a tasteful little bonfire. It is a crate packed with records detonated in center field, an actual explosion, a blast that tears a hole in the grass. And at the sight of it, the crowd does not politely applaud. It pours out of the stands and onto the field by the thousands, lighting fires, tearing up the turf, a genuine riot, until the damage is so total that the second game cannot be played and the home team is forced to forfeit. A professional baseball game called off because the crowd that came to destroy disco could not be contained. You watch the footage afterward and something in you goes cold and still. One of the great musicians of the whole era, a man who made some of the records that defined it, will look at this same footage and say it felt like a book burning, and the comparison does not feel like an exaggeration once you have seen the flames and the crowd and the joy in the destruction. Because that is the detail you cannot get past. The joy. The faces are not angry. The faces are delighted, ecstatic, and gleeful, having the time of their lives destroying the thing you love. And then there is the detail that removes the last of your doubt about what this actually is. People did not only bring disco records to be destroyed. They brought records by black artists that have nothing to do with disco, soul and funk and rhythm and blues, gathered up and thrown on the pile too. The costume slips, right there, in what got fed to the fire. A crowd that claimed to hate a genre turned out to be perfectly happy to burn the work of a whole people, and the genre was only ever the word they used for it. You suspected this for weeks. Now it is detonating in center field on the news. They are calling it the night disco died, and the phrase will stick. And there is a brutal accuracy to it that has nothing to do with music charts. Something did die that night, out on the torn-up grass under the smoke. Not the music itself, which is harder to kill than that, but the pretense that the backlash was about taste, the costume the slogan wore so well for so long that died in the explosion, visible to anyone willing to look at what was actually in the crate. You look. You do not look away, and you understand, finally and completely, exactly what you have been watching gather all this time. You wake up into an industry that changed its mind overnight. The stations that played your records all week have quietly dropped the format. The label that signed acts in a frenzy is cancelling projects and not returning calls. The session work dries up. The word that described your entire world has become commercially poisonous, and the people losing the most are the ones who built the sound in the first place. You are watching a livelihood evaporate, not because the music got worse, but because a mood decided it was finished. The change is fast, total, and strangely quiet, given how loud the destruction was. There is no announcement, no formal end. There is just a Monday where the stations that played the music all week have, overnight, stopped, switching formats with the panicked speed of people fleeing a building. The records did not change. The floors did not empty. But the gatekeepers caught the mood off the ballpark field, and the gatekeepers decided all at once that the safe thing was to pretend they never liked it either. The label is the next thing to turn. The same companies that signed every act they could find a year ago, in the gold rush after the movie, are now cancelling projects, shelving records, and remembering they were rock fans all along. Lenny the producer has sessions falling off the calendar one after another. The work you did for a flat fee and no credit, that work is drying up. Because nobody is making the records anymore. Because the word for the records has become poison, and a poisoned word does not sell, and selling was always the only thing the labels actually cared about. You watch who absorbs the damage, and it is exactly who you feared. Not the rock acts, who reclaim the airwaves with visible relief. Not the executives who simply pivot to the next profitable thing the way they pivoted into this one. The people who lose everything are the ones at the bottom and the ones who built it. The session players, the one-hit acts, the working musicians, so many of them black, who made the entire sound and are now watching their careers vanish for the crime of being associated with a word a stadium decided to set on fire. None of it is about the music being any good. The music did not get worse on the drive home from Chicago. The same records that filled floors on Friday fill them on Monday. What changed is not the sound but the permission, the collective agreement about what it is acceptable to like, and that agreement reversed overnight on the strength of a riot and a slogan and a mood. An entire industry of livelihoods got deleted not by any failure of the work, but by a verdict that had nothing to do with the work at all. Marcus stands at the counter of the record shop, gone quiet in a new way. The bins that moved all year are not moving. The DJs come in less. He saw it coming, called it an overdose weeks ago, and being right about it has given him no satisfaction at all. They will say the music died, he tells you, but the music did not die. The music went home, back underground, back to the rooms that never needed the radio's permission in the first place. It is the people who tried to make a living in the daylight, he says, who are going to get hurt. You stand in the quiet shop, in the quiet new world, and you feel the whole bright machine winding down around you. The phone is not ringing. The sessions are cancelled. The stations are playing guitars again with the relief of people who were never comfortable, and 1,000 careers built on a beautiful sound are evaporating in the space of a single changed mind. You did not lose your love of the music. You lost the world that briefly paid for it, and you watch, helpless, as it is taken first and hardest from the people who deserved to lose it least. You follow the music as it retreats, and you find it has gone back exactly where it began. The big rooms close or change their names, but the membership clubs with the serious sound systems are still there, still full, still moving. The crowd that was there first is there last. In a parking garage and a few unmarked lofts, the beat keeps going under a different name, mutating into something that will be called house and techno before long. You are standing in the quiet survival of a thing that was supposed to have died in a stadium. The big famous rooms are the first to fall, which makes sense, because they were always the most exposed. They close, or they quietly change their names and their music and develop a sudden, total amnesia about the poisoned word they rode to fame. The glamour, it turns out, was the most fragile part, the part most dependent on being fashionable, and fashion has moved on, taking the velvet ropes and the celebrity platforms and the photographers with it. The shiny top layer peels away first, but underneath it, the rooms that never depended on fashion are simply still there. The membership clubs, the carded congregations, the serious, devoted, and sweaty spaces with the worship sound systems, they barely register the apocalypse the radio is reporting. Theo's room is still full. The parking garage with the legendary system is still full. The crowd that built this, the crowd that was there on the first night, is still there on what the rest of the world is calling the last night, dancing as if no stadium ever exploded, because to them it changed nothing. You understand, standing in one of these surviving rooms, that the underground was never really part of the boom, and so cannot really be part of the bust. The boom was the daylight version, the radio and the labels and the supermarket wallpaper, the part built to be sold and therefore the part that could be unsold. This, the original thing, the protected thing, was never for sale in the first place. You cannot cancel a congregation. You can only stop photographing it, which the world has now done, and which the congregation has always quietly preferred. And it is changing, right here, in front of you, into whatever comes next. The beat is mutating, the record's getting stranger and more electronic, the DJ's pushing the sound into new shapes that do not have a name yet but will, soon, names like house and techno, born in rooms exactly like this one, in this city and in Chicago and Detroit, out of the exact same impulse that built the first loft party. The thing did not die. It went back underground and got back to work, doing what it always did, inventing the future of dance music in rooms the daylight had stopped watching. Marcus, whose shop survived because the serious DJs never stopped needing serious records, says it best when you bring him the news that the music is supposedly dead. It is not dead, he says. It just stopped answering to people who never understood it. Marcus sets a strange new electronic record on the counter, something that does not sound like the disco you knew and is unmistakably its child, and he tells you to listen to where it is going, because where it is going to be enormous. Eventually, on its own terms, in its own time, with or without the radio's permission. You take the strange new record and step back into one of the surviving rooms, the unmarked, uncancelable rooms where the whole thing started and never stopped. The beat is still going. The crowd that built it is still moving inside it, changed but unbroken, already busy turning it into the next thing. You stand in the middle of the quiet survival of something that 50,000 people tried to blow up, and you understand that they aimed at the wrong target entirely, because the part that mattered was never in the crate. It was here. It was always here. And it is still, stubbornly, beautifully, going. You reach the turn of the decade and feel the room get quieter in a way that has nothing to do with the backlash. The sexual freedom that defined the era is about to meet something no one understands yet, and over the next few years the faces will start to go missing from the floor, one and then many. The host who guarded the rope so jealously will be gone before he is old. You are standing at the edge of an ending that the music could not see coming, in a room that still does not know. The backlash, for all its fire, was the ending everyone could see. The stadium, the slogan, the cancelled records, those were loud and visible, and you watched them coming for weeks. But there is another ending gathering now, at the turn of the decade, and this one makes no noise at all. It arrives quietly, invisibly, in the very rooms the backlash could not touch, and it does not care in the slightest whether the music is fashionable. The freedom that defined the whole era, the candid, joyous, uninsured freedom of the bathhouses and the balconies and the after-hours rooms, is about to meet something no one has a name for yet. There is no warning, there is no slogan. There is only, over the next few years, a quiet that begins to spread through the scene, a thinning, faces that stop appearing on the floor, one and then a few and then far too many, an absence that grows where a crowd used to be. The room does not understand what is happening to it. The room cannot. It is too loud and too happy and too certain that the worst thing that can happen tonight is running out of poppers. You think of the warm fog of the bathhouse, the cabaret between the steam rooms, the candid arithmetic recited so casually, the 150 faces, the total consequence-free joy of people who had finally found a place to be free. You knew even then, standing in the fog, that you were watching a happiness that was uninsured, a freedom standing in the path of something it could not see. You said nothing, because there was nothing to say that they could have used. And now the something is arriving, and it is worse and quieter and more patient than the backlash ever was. The cheerful host, the one who worked the rope and sorted the crowd like a salad and bragged about his fortune, will be among them. The man who decided, with a glance, who got to exist each night, will himself be gone before he is old, taken by the same quiet thing that is thinning his old dance floor. There is a terrible symmetry in it that no one would have designed. The keeper of the door walking through the one door that never once checked his outfit, early, like so many of the people he used to wave past his rope into the bright, protected room. It is simply what happened next, the quiet ending that came after the loud one, arriving for a generation of the most alive people in the city while they were still mid-dance, still mid-freedom, still sure the night had hours left in it. The room danced toward it without ever seeing it, and you cannot warn them, so you do the only thing left, which is let them dance. You let the beat carry on, in the surviving room, with the surviving crowd. At the edge of an ending the music could not compose and could not stop. They are beautiful, free, and alive, and they are dancing, and a great many of them do not have as long as they believe. You stand among them in the warm, familiar sound, holding what you know and saying none of it, and you let them have the night, the whole night, every last hour of it, because the night is still theirs, and the floor is full, and the music is good, and nobody, for a few more hours, is checking the time. So that was your tour of the glitter and the rot underneath it. You got dressed for 4 hours and judged in 2 seconds. You fed a building cash it refused to write down, met a mob you were warned not to mention, and danced under a cartoon moon sniffing a cartoon spoon. You learned the hustle badly, wrecked your feet on purpose, and watched a stadium full of people set fire to a beautiful thing and call it a Thursday. And underneath all the absurdity were real people, the ones who actually built this. The DJs inventing a craft for a coat check wage. The dancers who made the whole culture in rooms they had to guard with a card, because those rooms were the only safe place the city offered them. They got the least of the money and the most of the ruin, and they kept the thing that mattered anyway, carried it back underground, and quietly turned it into the music half the world dances to now. The mirror ball is still spinning somewhere, throwing light in every direction so nobody has to look straight at what it cost. The velvet rope is gone. The cash is long since counted by someone. And the beat the whole thing was built on never actually stopped. It just stopped asking permission. Thank you for staying up with me through all of it, the bright part and the dark part both. You made it to the end of the night, which, in this story, is the hardest part there is. Now let the room go quiet. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears. Let the bass fade out of your chest until your heartbeat is only your own again, slow and even and yours. Let the lights dim, one by one, until there is nothing left to look at and nothing left to be seen for. You don't have to dance anymore. You don't have to be chosen. You can just lie here in the dark, off the record, unphotographed, with no rope and no judgment, and nowhere you have to get into. Close your eyes. Sleep well,